and welcome to the Dr. Tech Show, where myself, Pauline Roche, and Sweyn Hunter, and occasional guests guide you to the world of online communications in a show which was the brainchild of the late great internet evangelist John Popham. And let's start off with the weather. Why not? Sweyn, how are you? How's the weather where you are?
Weather is fair. It's not too cold, a bit overcast, but we've had a nice few days of spring-like weather.
And similarly here in the west of Ireland, it is, they call it spitting here, doesn't sound very nice, but it's rain that's kind of
Rain that's
gentle.
only trying to be rain.
Yeah, it'll be proper rain when it grows up. But you look out the window and you think, I could go for a walk in that, and you do, and then you come back and you're soaked. But it's nice to be out.
Does Irish have lots of different words for rain, just like allegedly Eskimo does for snow? Or?
Apparently, I have a dictionary my sister gave me the other day. Like another one to add to my pile of dictionaries. Yeah, it does. It's different. Certainly in English, Irish English. There's lots of different words to describe it, like spitting or mizzling or misty or a soft day. Have you heard that phrase?
Soft day,
soft
yes,
day, thank God.
Yes.
Yeah. So we are fond of talking about the weather. But we can usually get out unless it's lashing rain, and that is quite heavy.
Lashing rain,
yeah,
that's a good one too.
Yeah.
Anyway, we're starting to sound like word of mouth, so we are.
Yes, let's move on. Okay, so our first part of we're celebrating or noting at this time of year, on the 20 at this time, kind of this week or whatever, on the 24th of April 1962, the Massachusetts Institute of Technology sent the first TV signal by satellite for the first time from California to Massachusetts, and the first image transmitted by communication satellite was the word MIT. And this was orchestrated by MIT's Lincoln Laboratory Station in Camp Park, California, with sponsorship from the Air Force. And the message was received at Milestone Hill in Westward, Massachusetts, which was 2,700 miles away. Apparently, the signal was weak compared with the background electrical noise in the atmosphere, and the signal was also inconsistent, and these two factors compromised the picture quality. And I think we can relate to that in our modern communications with images and pictures and picture quality. I know, I'm well used to kind of pictures freezing and sort of you're sitting there and you're thinking, are they really just frozen, or have they?
It's a good trick to sit in a slightly awkward pose, stock still, and see if anybody asks you whether you're frozen or not.
Yes,
it's in a very boring session.
That does happen. Okay, and moving on, we note two religious celebrations that actually started or happened from last week, which we omitted to mention. And the first one is Ramadan, which is the Islamic holy month, time for Muslims all over the world to renew their focus on spiritual life and its practical application in daily life. And during Ramadan, Muslims abstain from food and drink during daylight hours. And so, as I say, this started last week for Muslims all over the world, including the UK, and goes on for 30 days. And the end of Ramadan, there's a big celebration called Eid, and it's a great celebration. And like Muslims eat in the evening after daylight hours, and when they break the fast at celebrations called Iftar. And I've been very fortunate in Birmingham when I'm there to take part in lots of really enjoyable breaking fast celebrations. Is it something you've been to ever, Sweyn?
No, I haven't had the chance to be part of that sort of thing. No, I one is always aware of Ramadan when it comes around each year, and it's very interesting phenomenon.
Yeah, it's good to see a community that celebrates doing good and doing good deeds, more particularly during Ramadan than at other times. And where I live in Birmingham, we have a mosque around the corner, and you see people going to prayers on a regular basis, and it's nice to be part of that celebration and note that it happens. And the second celebration we noted also started last week, or happened last week, was Vaisakhi, which is time of the year observed by Hindus and Sikhs. It marks the beginning of Hindu solar new year, and the first day of the month of Vaisakhi, known as Vaisakha, is usually celebrated on the 13th or 14th of April every year, and is a historical and religious festival in both Hinduism and Sikhism. And we send our greetings to both Muslims and Sikhs and Hindus who are listening to us, as well as all our other listeners, and hope that you're getting online and your communications during this time are as good as ever, and that you enjoy the celebrations and the blessings that it brings into your lives.
Absolutely. All good wishes to everyone celebrating those two festivals.
And so we progress to our stories for the week. We don't have a guest this week, so we are picking up on some stories that we've picked up over the last about 2 weeks. And the first one is entitled Funding for Scholar X in Nigeria. And Scholar X is a project from a company that is doing this in Nigeria, and it's been awarded a grant as part of the GSMA Innovation Fund for Mobile Internet Adoption and Digital Inclusion, funded by the UK Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office and supported by the Deutsche Gesellschaft für internationale Zusammenarbeit, GmbH, the GSMA and its members. And this fund aims to increase mobile internet adoption and usage for the underserved not currently able to use mobile internet services. And the project Scholar X aims to develop and launch a new digital skills learning app called Learn AM, which will provide basic digital skills to the underserved. It will be available in local Nigerian languages and will teach users skills such as opening an email account, creating an online presence for their business, and using Google to search for basic information. It will be developed on the Kaios platform, which means it will be accessible via affordable, internet-enabled feature phones. And through this project, Scholar X will also provide a pay-as-you-go smartphone with locking technology, which will enable customers to pay in installments for 6 months. I'm really impressed with that. I think that sounds like a really useful project for, as it says, people who are underserved.
Absolutely, it's really interesting how mobile signal has been used in Africa and other parts of the less developed world, quite often completely bypassing some of the more horrible copper wire type developments that happened in Europe. So yes, I was actually just trying to figure out what GSMA means. I think it's the Association of GSM Providers, where GSM is a French phrase for 2G phone signal.
Oh, okay.
GSM was sometimes called GSM, but I've just found myself drowning in a sea of other acronyms trying to find out what that one is. So
well, we haven't followed.
I think it's basically the Global Association for Providers of Mobile Phone Signal.
Okay, well, we have a following story that'll tell us a bit more about it. But as you say, it's good to hear what's happening in other continents, and what we can learn from what's available elsewhere. We're looking at increasing the broadband capacity here at home in Ireland, and my mother's been promised fibre to the cabinet, which, as I understand it, will be a better experience to the cabinet in the street where she lives, and then it'll still be wire to the homes, and that's copper wire. And the guy who came to have a look at it recently said, well, that's 40 years old, that wire. So we're hoping that it'll be much better.
Well, bizarrely, this is something that I was really surprised me when I learned it. Sometimes older copper wire is better for high-speed data signals than more recent copper wire, because just in the sort of decade before broadband came along, there were a lot of savings made on the thickness and quality of copper wire. So that they started to install phone lines with much less good quality copper, which has actually only become noticeable once speeds have started to rise. So actually, 40, 50, 60, 70-year-old copper lines are often, apart from where they join together, it's always where the cables join that you get the problems. And some lines obviously need a bit of attention there, but the actual wires themselves are actually better for broadband than more modern ones. Of course, none of it's as good as fibre, we better add, since that's what we all believe in. And hello, Chris Condor, if you're listening.
Absolutely. Yes, we must get Chris on the show soon. Okay, yeah, good to know all that. And so we'll move on to the next story, which is about the fund that funded the previous project in the previous story. And this was the GSMA Innovation Fund for Mobile Internet Adoption and Digital Inclusion Grantees. So there was a selection of grantees that got grants for the projects from this fund. And the story tells us that for most of the world's population, mobile is the primary way to access the internet. Although access to mobile internet is driving digital inclusion, there's still a usage gap with over 3.4 billion people living in areas covered by mobile broadband networks, but who are not using mobile internet services. And as a result, they're missing out from access to information, services, and life-enhancing opportunities such as health information and guidance, financial service, and employment opportunities. And these unconnected populations, they call them, they're predominantly located in developing world markets, typically on low incomes and lacking basic digital literacy skills. And the article also helpfully says social norms and disparities between men and women in terms of education and income influence women's reduced access to and use of mobile technology, with the result that women are 15% less likely to use internet than men in low and middle income countries. So how can the mobile industry and the supporting ecosystem address the usage gap and bring the benefits of mobile internet to those left behind? Well, this fund helped to address this challenge. It was launched in April 2020 with support, as we heard from the previous story, from the UK Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office, FCDO, the German Federal Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development, the GSMA and its members. And the objective of the fund was to open up opportunities for innovative startups and SMEs to address the key barriers of accessibility, affordability, digital skills, and safety and security to prevent many from connecting to mobile internet. And on the screen now, Sweyn is showing the successful projects from around the world. Nigeria, as we said earlier, Ethiopia, Pakistan, India, Uganda, Zimbabwe, and Zambia. So it sounds like there's some really interesting work going on there that those of us supporting digital inclusion in the UK could probably learn from.
Absolutely.
Nice. It's so just looking at the titles of the projects there: digital marketing service provider for African SMEs, technology solutions provider to community-based savings and loans organizations. Yeah, that was in Uganda. In Pakistan, digital learning provider. In India, conversational AI provider for the low literate, vernacular speaking, mobile first internet users. Very specific.
That's a good one, isn't it?
It does, yeah. I like the sound of that.
AI needs to be able to learn in all sorts of different languages, or different dialects and styles of speaking.
And people with low literacy levels, and plenty of people in the UK are not, as we know from our library friends, are not able to read and write, and so a low level of literacy shouldn't be a barrier to people having been digitally included. In Nigeria, the digital learning provider, which is the Scholar X program that we refer to the first story. In Pakistan, another digital learning provider. Another one in Pakistan, online platform for artisans in Pakistan. In Zambia, one-stop shop for community energy, water and connectivity. And in Zimbabwe, pay-as-you-go solar energy systems provider. Sounds extremely worthwhile projects.
Like a very interesting set of projects. Yeah,
absolutely. We'll watch that with interest and see if it comes up again. I hope we will learn more about it. And so we move on. Our next story in the sequence is how a new tablet has transformed someone's language learning, someone called Zainab. And this is from actionfoundation.org.uk. And the story is about a person who was trying to join in with English language classes on a battered old mobile phone with a tiny screen and limited internet access. And this was an asylum seeker living on £5 asylum support per day. So Action Foundation has a digital inclusion project which kicked off at the end of 2020 and is tackling this issue head on. It's aimed at adult refugees, asylum seekers, and other migrants who are digitally excluded and at increased risk of social and economic exclusion. And the project provides devices and data for those who do not have them, and training on using the new device and basic skills and competencies required to be active online safely, mentoring to help clients with personal goals and needs, such as accessing education and training opportunities or applying for work. And the foundation has recruited a team of 6 volunteers to help deliver the project who speak multiple languages. And the project officer, Jess Balmer, says the project has proved hugely popular amongst our clients both for the tablet and preloaded data SIM, but also for the skills and knowledge our volunteer trainers impart, meaning whole families can use their tablets safely and securely. And so far, they've been able to reach 165 people, which sounds like a really wonderful thing to have done with a project that only started at the end of 2020. How for learning generally, Sweyn, what do you think about tablets as opposed to laptops or desktop PCs?
I'm not an expert in this area at all, but I would think it's horses for courses, really. I think for some basic interactions like banking and other stuff, that tablets would be absolutely fine. I think that tablets, once you start getting into more sort of language-based or word-based, or you're trying to use spreadsheets and things like that, I think that a laptop is in the end better. But there's no doubt that I think some people can get going quicker for some things using a tablet, and I guess if those things are the priority, then that's fine. Go for a tablet.
Yeah,
I'm a bit less enthusiastic about giving tablets to lots of school children, because I do believe that they will get to a point quite quickly that they'll want a keyboard.
yeah.
And there's just no real way around that in the end. So far,
Yeah.
for all our talk of AI and language recognition and all that stuff, basic for academic or intellectual says he can't even get a word out. Activities, you're in the end, you're going to have to write things or use proper computer applications to calculate things. So I think a laptop in the end is usually better.
I mean, I can see from this, in this story, how obviously if you're trying to do something on a phone, a tablet would be definitely a step up on that.
Oh, absolutely. And certainly for a lot of things that we talk about in terms of digital inclusion, quite a lot of these services have tablet optimized interfaces. So where providers like banks or I don't know what universal credit's like on a tablet, but for things like that, if there is available a tablet optimized application, then that's great. It's when you get beyond those things, either to less well presented day-to-day living applications or learning situations, I think that if even a tablet, although it is better than a phone, as you say, I think even a tablet will start to be a limitation as to what you can get done, if particularly if you're relatively new to technology as a whole. Because if you're experienced with different types of technology, you can kind of make allowances and make the thing work on a tablet. But I sometimes think that half the problem that people are having with some applications is that that's what they're trying to do, and they don't really understand what it would have looked like to start with on a laptop, so to make their own sort of behavioral adjustments to make it work for them on a tablet. So I think there's a whole can of worms with tablets and phones and laptops. And I've just realized I should look into this and see if there's any research about it.
Yeah, I'd like to see that, because I've only been learning recently about that if you are searching on your phone for something and you come across the tablet-enabled website, then you're likely to use less data, because it's not got the whole bells and whistles of a desktop browser setup. Yes. And I didn't know that before. And when you're trying to teach people and ensure that they don't run out of data, then surely it seems like a useful thing to know.
Absolutely, that's an aspect I hadn't thought of at all, which I should have done. Yes, the trouble with the strength and the weakness of apps is that they're highly tailored for the hardware they're expected to run on.
Yeah.
So if you want universal access easily, then it's great to have an app. But from a provider's point of view, for every app that you have, it's another thing to maintain and make sure it works over time. And there's a big balance there between development effort and maintenance effort. And ease of use for end users or customers or people, as we call them.
Yeah. Yeah, it seems like a flowchart or something like that would help people to decide.
It's a design question, isn't it? In the end, what is it that I'm trying to provide, and to who
for? Yeah.
am I trying to provide it, and what does it need to look like for the different categories of or different use cases, different people? Try and use the people word wherever we can. And it's just a question of deciding in design terms right back at the beginning how you're going to approach the provision of a service, hopefully including representatives or numbers of people who are actually going to experience the service and need to rely on it.
Absolutely. But I've come across a lot of people probably in the last 12 to 18 months who say, I want to can I make an app? Can you help me make an app? Well, I can, but really, I would try and discourage you.
Because a lot of this thinking is behind why gov.uk looks like it does. It's a website. It's very clear. It's very straightforward to load onto a different variety of devices. So it is possible to design websites so that they're a bit better for mobile or tablet users, but it's all a question of design, and it's a question of what the providers of services decide to do.
Yeah. Well, when people talk about how should a website look and stuff, and I think it's about I usually say it's about what you want and what you get from it. Like Amazon, I wouldn't, I think it's a dreadful website. And I don't mind who hears me. Jeff Bezos, can you hear me? It's just cluttered. It's just, but people like it and people use it all the time and people find what they want on it. So obviously it works for the users.
Big market leaders like that, and also like gov.uk, they tend to set a kind of template, a kind of what everyone in the end will be interacting with gov.uk and or Amazon to a certain extent. So you've got to understand how they work. And to some extent, other people who have less general audiences, sometimes the thing to do is to focus on one of those styles and try and emulate it slightly so that it's less for users to get to grips with. I mean, the evolution of what a bog standard commerce website looks like has evolved gradually over the years, and basically we now all understand the concept of your basket, which you add things that you want to buy into, and the process of checking out and all that sort of thing. Well, that wasn't necessarily obvious when the internet was new. It's just that people have gradually found that that's the way that people respond and are able to use it. So yeah, a lot of waffle can be spent on apps versus websites versus other stuff, as we're demonstrating. Yeah.
Okay, we'll move on to our next story, which was topical in that about this time last week, we were marking the sad demise of the Chief Royal who had passed away, but that the effect on the BBC was that they stopped all usual broadcasts, and Dr. Frances Ryan, who is a columnist and journalist for the Guardian, and has writes about disability law because that's her personal experience. I don't know if you're on the right screen there, Sweyn. It's a tweet where she said the BBC are in a no-win situation for wiping all radio and most TV is a terrible move in a pandemic. Lots of isolated people can't just switch to Netflix and don't even have the internet, and the BBC is their company in a quiet house. And there was a number of replies to that. You've got on screen now. So people saying, yes, my bedbound dad is finding the pandemic hard enough without his routine being interrupted. Other people defended the BBC, but lots of people said it was a thing that prioritized and I kind of ignored the fact that some people don't have access to the internet, and so the BBC was the only thing. One person there says, "I miss my BBC Radio 3 terribly. It's my companion and helps stave off the darkness and loneliness."
Full range of opinions, I think it's fair to say in that.
I think so. Yeah.
I think we have a mutual friend who lives on her own and has health challenges. Who I noticed had tweeted that she had seen this coming and had downloaded copies of programs from the iPlayer and other places so that she had something to actually look at rather than just wall-to-wall funeral preparations.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think the BBC's probably in a fairly invidious position where if they hadn't done what they did do, which was basically to, at least for 18 hours, to completely focus on Prince Philip's death, then they would have had all sorts of criticism from certain quarters. And if as they did, they do it, then they're going to get criticism from the other side. But I think this is kind of outside of that. This idea that people relying so much, particularly if you're living on your own, on regular television and radio, I think it's an aspect certainly that I didn't think of in advance. It only occurred to me as people were commenting on it at the time, and I suspect that's probably true of the BBC as well.
Yeah. So lessons learned, maybe, hopefully.
Although it is also ironic. I mean, from a point of view of someone who has been involved slightly in the past in business continuity planning, so making organizational plans for what happens if things suddenly happen or things go wrong. They've had this plan for this coverage for many years. And then, of course, as someone said, no plan survives contact with the enemy. There's a nice military analogy for Prince Philip. We'd like that. And indeed, so suddenly they have to do it, but they have to add a pandemic in. So everyone involved in this, in all of this, has had a lot of extra challenge to make anything work. So, the BBC, I find it hard to criticize the BBC very, very, very sincerely, because I think they do their best.
Yeah, but we have to give both sides, and some people.
Oh yes, I mean,
found
and
it difficult.
the BBC will be wanting to learn, like all public sector providers, they'll be wanting to hear all the responses and take a view so that they can take positives and negatives forward for other similar occasions. Let's hope there aren't too many of them.
Yes, we hope so. And our next story is about 600 plus open source, experimental and tiny tools. And this just grabbed me because, we're always trying to tell people about what they can use to improve their experience online. I haven't actually even looked at the range of tools, but if once it's open and kind of free, then obviously that's very attractive to us. And if you open you've got the tweet open there, and then if you go to the website, tinytools.directory, you can sort by different different search words there. It gives a whole list. So the words free are good, experimental, tiny, sound effects, sound editor, map maker. I can think of a lot of people who would find this very useful.
6 tools with free tiny map maker. Let's see what they are. Except I made it so big I can't find the go button.
I'm not sure I've heard of most of these, but we know there's loads of people out there making brilliant stuff. So it's very nice to have it all.
There they are. They're listed.
Okay, yeah, they're listed underneath.
The 6 that have come up are one-page dungeon, a very simple one-page dungeon generator. Don't think they're there. Or map generator, a cellular automata tool for building custom maps, envisaged for use in tabletop role-playing games. Okay, yes. Topo, get a little square of 3D elevation data anywhere. Let's try that one.
Okay, so we're opening up.
So we've got a mountain showing.
Not
sure what we're looking at here. Well, we're looking at a 3D representation of Lake Atitlan, where that is. And there we are. There it is.
So if you've put the coordinates in, you get a representation.
Yeah.
Of some sort. Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah,
I think I have to install something to make it actually work. But there's another. It's just a way of seeing the landscape in 3D by plugging in coordinates. Wow, that's quite neat. Might use that later.
Yeah. just show, just goes to show how many different things are out there on the internet. Painting and drawing.
Tools.directory. Yay.
Yeah. I think a lot of people will find that interesting. I'll put that into Digital WM News as well, I think. I encourage people to come back to me. The dungeon decorator one was interesting. That's listed as well under paint and draw. So yes, I think we could spend lots of time flicking through.
I think there were about 800 tiny tools altogether when I switched off all the filters. So there's lots to explore.
Yeah. Yeah, the person who created is someone who's Everest Pipkin on Twitter, and who makes games and occasional software on the Gulf Coast. And they explained that the list runs the gamut from single-purpose utilities to enormous open-source applications, and the goal is to enable constellations of working entirely outside of proprietary systems, moving instead from one handmade software to another. That's a great ambition.
I think I'm seeing why there's so much about dungeons. It's focused on games and websites. So I think it's dungeons, as in Dungeons and Dragons, that are being spoken about. So it says somewhere on this, the list has a focus on artful tools and toys that are as fun to use as they are functional, and that might be useful in building your game or website or interactive project. So there you go.
I think I can probably bring this to the attention of
774 tools altogether to explore. Wow.
Excellent. Fill your boots, as they say.
Fill your boots, yes.
Excellent. Thank you, Everest Pipkin, for that.
Absolutely. I'm going to follow Everest Pipkin.
Yeah. And moving on, we're going to talk about Charity Hour, which is a regular time on Twitter when people talk about things that are of interest to charities every Wednesday, 8 to 9 p.m. in UK time. So they talk about different things. And the last one was about investing in digital tech. So I thought that might be of interest to our listeners and viewers. What they do is they post questions with numbers, and then people post in their answers. So they were talking about volunteering, transformation. Some people wanted to get out and about, and they don't want just digital, but they have the option of combining digital with lots of other things. I contributed this a bit to myself because they were asking, what do you need to think about when you're thinking about digital? And it is about tools, but it's also about the culture of an organization. Are they ready for transformation? Do they typically make decisions in an agile way, quickly, and do they kind of start with something small, like the way I've been taught about agile, Sweyn, is always about the skateboard analogy, where somebody thinks they want to build a car, but you can start off with like a skateboard or a scooter and then build to a bike, and see what they're happy with at different stages of the build. So investing in tech needs to be appropriate for the size of the organization and their risk-taking levels and stuff like that. So I think that was a really good charity hour to go back to if people want to and learn from what
so
others,
I think the easiest way to follow that conversation would be to search in Twitter for #charity hour, I think.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. As I say, they have different questions every week, but lots of interesting people to pick up on there. And one of the questions was, the first question actually in that series was, what ways can digital tech be used by charities and what are the benefits? And my answer last week was, lots of our beneficiaries are online, so it's where they are or will be looking for us. So it makes sense for us to be where they are.
Absolutely. I mean, that's so true. It's so much the case now that a large proportion of the population, if one is looking for something, one simply searches for it on I'm going to say Google it. Other search engines are available. I don't even look up phone numbers of local businesses, other than by that it means I put the name of the local business and put phone in, and somehow miraculously the search provides me with phone number should I need to call them. So it's where the people are is in that kind of not very well developed, searching hopelessly space. And if charities and other organizations can find the people they're aiming at in there, that's what they need to do.
Yeah. And the last question of the series last week was, what are the barriers to investing in digital tech and how can they be overcome? And SCVO Sandwell, which is one of the CVSs around the country, says sometimes it isn't the tech itself that is the barrier, it is, and they give 5 different reasons: ongoing maintenance of the tech, fees needed to keep or maintain the tech, training or upskilling, confidence by those using it, and safeguarding concerns associated with its use. So I think that's a really good list of the kind of things. And the maintenance, I think, is one that often people forget about. They think they're going to get this technology and that's it. That's the end of the story. But it does need to be maintained, even if it's simple defragging or kind of Windows updates. Oh, this is a classic one. I have a laptop here in my mum's house that I keep for when I'm coming in and don't want to travel with my own laptop. And so I was here in September, and now I'm here again in March, April, and I had to do Windows updates on the laptop for the time when I hadn't been here. It took me 2 days, Sweyn.
Yes.
2 days.
Yes.
To for all the updates to be finished and to restart the laptop.
Yeah, it's yes. What can I say?
So it's not encouraging for anybody who's not keen on that sort of thing, and if they don't do the updates, they might miss out on important things, and the machine might be slower and stuff like that. So it's it's
we can all use Linux. We can all use Linux.
Don't they have updates?
Well, they have updates, but they're not as onerous.
Yeah.
I think how we were discussing tablets versus laptop previously, that actually updates and antivirus is the amount of effort that you need to put into that for a laptop is not nothing. So that's a black mark against laptops there as well, especially if people are brand new to all this stuff.
Mm-hmm. Okay, we'll move on, and our next story is also from Twitter. Digital literacy issues in all age cohorts, and this was a story from Sinead O'Carroll on Twitter, and I'm just loading it now. And Sinead is she said she describes herself as a wannabe figure skater but actual camogie player. Camogie is an Irish women's hurling game, which is played with sticks and a very hard ball. And she also edits the journal IE, which is provides open access to valuable journalism in Ireland. But anyway,
is it like ice shinty?
It's fast, and I got my glasses broken when I played it when I was at school, so I can't recommend it very highly. But it's a very popular game, and I mean, hurling is one of the fastest games you'll ever see. People running and carrying a ball and hitting it with the stick and getting it over a bar is a phenomenon, and definitely. Anyway, so Sinead's tweet was about saying there are obviously going to be digital literacy issues in all age cohorts, probably increase with age, but please can we not talk about 65 to 69-year-olds like they haven't been using computers and the internet for the past 3 decades? And I think we'd certainly agree with that. We have covered a story like this previously. Well. And thank you, yes. Yes, very good manners on Twitter. And yeah, she got some good replies to that. One person saying, my nana is dead 5 years or so, but when she was alive, her best friend would also check the live stream if they're local to see who was there, then call my nana to go for a pint when it was interesting enough. And I think that's great. If you can check your pubs, the live stream of your local pub, and see who's there and who you might want to see or not see, as the case may be. That sounds like brilliantly digitally included.
That's me of John Popham's idea to have community video walls, which are covered in screens of people who want to have a chat, and you can just go and speak to whoever you want to on the video wall. Yeah, I mean, I'm quite certain there are reasons why it'll never happen, but I think that idea for pubs is great.
Yeah. I'm just reading down to see more stories. someone whose father was born in 1923, and his colleagues putting in long hours at their local bank branch, getting things ready for computerization of the banking systems in the early 80s. And then somebody points out the very obvious and important thing that, it's not just blaming the people using forms, good UX, plain English, usability testing with your target audience, which we said earlier, a mobile friendly and accessible form are critical to success with any age group. And also using language. Someone says, the same person just says, why call it something alien like a portal? It's a website with a form. Don't make things sound difficult or new when they're not. Here. At Sinead Clandillon, who's at Shinty on Twitter. Yeah.
All right. Yes. Yes, that's a great one.
And someone else saying their 70-plus-year-old dad likes to remind them that they worked on the first computer to come to the Irish Examiner office as a newspaper in Ireland. Back in the day, it was the size of a house. I can remember a computer like that. But this person can also book a tea time for golf pretty quickly on the golf club website. So people are using it. And for what they want, it doesn't have to be the super duper. That's camogie, yeah.
It's a women's game.
Yeah.
It's a ball and stick. Oh my goodness, that looks rough. It's the Garda versus the Defence Forces game.
Wow.
Camogie match in 2012. I bet that one was played vigorously. What a great idea. So yeah, I'll have to look for more of that.
Yeah. So I think thanks, Sinead, for that very interesting thread.
Yes.
I think it certainly all relate to that.
Sinead's thread just underlines the risk that you take when you generalize on the basis of age. And I think at all age groups there will be a full spectrum of people who are literate, illiterate, comfortable and uncomfortable, knowledgeable and less knowledgeable.
Definitely. Moving on to our next story, which comes from New Zealand, and this is about the digital divide possibly leading to entrenched inequity. And this was an economist warning about this. BNZ, which is a bank in New Zealand, they did a digital skills report, and which estimated 700,000 adults, or 20% in New Zealand, do not have the digital skills deemed essential for modern life. Particularly people who are on low incomes, have lower levels of education, or have a disability, are less likely to have the digital skills they need to get by, according to the report. And chief economist at BNZ, Paul Conway, said that was a major concern. For example, about 30% of people with low levels of education or low incomes are found to lack essential digital skills. And for New Zealanders living with a disability, this figure jumps to 42%. And Paul is saying, by not urgently addressing this digital divide, we face the threat of entrenched inequity, as these people have become less able to engage with society and the economy, and the risk will only worsen as digital transformation picks up pace, with more of the economy, social services and our lives in general shifting online. As we've said before in this program, access to devices and internet was crucial, and providing lower cost options for people unable to afford them, which would break down the barrier. But obviously they say this will require a coordinated response from government, the private sector and NGOs. And one final finding of the report was that close to 40% of people in New Zealand, or 1.3 million, do not know where to get help to stay safe and secure online. It is an ongoing issue, isn't it, about staying safe online?
Sure is.
Sweyn, what's your go-to? Do you have a go-to organization for that?
I stick to a few well-worn applications and utilities that I've used for a few years now. That it's not easy. I mean, every time advice is given, the scammers find ways to get around that advice. So it's a question of constantly catching up with what needs to be done. I'm struck by these figures in New Zealand. I think they're very similar in some ways to figures that we've seen for the UK, or different parts of the UK even. It'd be interesting to see. New Zealand have done really well with the pandemic response in public health terms. It'd be interesting to see if they can turn their attention to this and make headway there too.
The government obviously has a national cybersecurity centre, and I have found their information, advice and guidance quite useful, including because they publish guidance, or have published guidance specifically for small charities, which I think was really progressive of them, because not everybody thinks about small charities when they're making those.
That's a good choice.
Plans.
That one. Of a source, and in fact I tend to see more or less everything that they put out through one channel or another, and properly recognizing it possibly.
There we go on screen now.
That.
Yeah, National Cyber Security Centre, helping to make the UK the safest place to live and work online.
And you're right, they do have some very readable, I mean, the website needs a bit of navigation, but there's some very readable, very down to earth advice on that website, and I think that would be a very good starting point for anyone who was wanting to just check that they are staying as safe as possible.
Yeah, good to see. Okay, and the next story is from a guy called Chris Lewis, who I just discovered on the internet yesterday, but apparently he's one of the leading bloggers on cancer and cancer treatments, having been diagnosed with cancer himself, about 10 years ago, I think now, and told he had 6 months to live. He's now blogging and talking and speaking about living with cancer, and it's called Chris's Cancer Community, and the article is called "The GP Will Triage You Now," and he goes through some history which I hadn't been fully aware of. Apparently, on the 10th of March 2020, Matt Hancock instructed a digital-first approach to access the NHS, and this meant that all consultations where possible in the GP or hospital settings should be performed by phone or by video to try and maintain services while reducing the chances of infection for staff and patients. And despite an enforced shift towards delivering consultations remotely, and some very critical narrative in the media, GP practices have continued to deliver large numbers of face-to-face consultations throughout the pandemic, with recent data suggesting that over 50% of consultations in general practice are currently face-to-face. Chris acknowledges that for many, the move to digital consultations have advantages. It's very convenient. It saves you hanging on the phone lines, and you could submit queries 24/7 via the NHS app or secure web forms. But are recognised downsides. Many patients may perceive their GP is not open or accessible, and there may be a loss on continuity of care. And again, some patients simply do not have the technology or skills to use online and digital services. And it's a long read, but it's worth, I think, reading, because he does have lots of good experience that people can relate to. But in summary, he's at the end of the article, it says that COVID-19 has forced the NHS to adopt drastically to offer digital-first solutions. More than half of consultations in GPs are now face-to-face again. Not all patients have the correct digital knowledge or equipment to ensure fair and equal access for all, and there's a risk of digital exclusion. And with the NHS policy referred to kind of at the title of the article, it's now currently suggesting a total triage approach, where triage is getting the right care for the right patient at the right time frame by the right service, which I think we could all support. Many minor A&E problems are already meant to be triage or use 111 first. And a number of other points, if you don't mind me going through them, Sweyn, I think it's worth
No, it's very interesting.
Yeah, there are expanded numbers of clinical staff and GP teams now, and often the best person to help you is not your GP. And I know people always want to talk to the doctor, but maybe it's the nurse or the clinical specialist of some other type that can help you in your GP. There's a link in this article to another article, blog post that Chris wrote about how to make best use of your appointment, and this goes on about making notes, writing down what you think is wrong with you, so that you can help the GP or the other practitioner help you do a diagnosis. I mean, it does point out, Chris, either in this article or other articles, not everybody can use a smartphone or has a smartphone to be able to take a picture of their whatever's wrong with them, to be able to help the doctor or to be able to send it to the doctor. So there are still some gaps there. Chris points out there was a GP workforce crisis before COVID, which is now deepening, with many senior GPs reducing their hours, retiring early, or leaving the profession altogether. He agrees some form of triage will be necessary moving forward to try and make best use of the services available, and it's a hot topic apparently in the GP community. And his final point on the summary is some of the digital improvements brought in response to the pandemic, such as video consultations, secure SMS exchanges for photos, web inquiries, and e-consults, have certainly improved care for many, been very popular with patients, have actually improved access and speed of access for many patients, and should be embraced, retained, and used more widely moving forward. So overall, a positive response to digital triage. It's just, again, not forgetting those who won't or can't use these services. And he credits his friend Dr. Simon Hodes for supplying him with lots of the information that's here, which I think was very useful.
This is a description of the NHS in England, but in Scotland, where I'm in Orkney, exactly the same sorts of issues have been floating around, and exactly the same sorts of responses really have been adopted. I've had reason to have a few routine medical appointments over the past year or so, and a routine consultation with a consultant by video was just dead right for me. I mean, it's great. Equally, when I had to get a blood test, obviously you can't do that by video. You have to go in and get the blood taken. So that was also fine. And I think that everyone in Scotland in the NHS did a fantastic amount of work in the early weeks of the pandemic to roll out to all health providers a platform called Attend Anywhere. I think that's what it's called, and it's just, it looks like that NHS app in England by any other name, and therefore doctors are doing lots of their work that way. I mean, I think to be honest, my practice was doing quite a bit by phone to begin with, and seem to have persuaded us to see other people, not just the GPs themselves. So, but certainly the pandemic, I think the NHS, the way that the routine NHS services were adapted very quickly was really amazing.
Yeah, I think yeah, there has been great adaptation. I didn't realize actually that this had gone back to March, last year, but it's obviously to tackle coronavirus and the effects of it, and yeah, if some lessons are learned to improve services going forward, as they say, then that's all to the good.
I think the pandemic, dreadful though it's been in many ways for many people, for some kinds of service development, it's been a kind of unexpected, almost a benefit in trying things out to see how they work in a way that would have been very difficult or impossible to actually interest enough people to actually go for things. So that I think there will be, particularly in health and other public services, there will be a kind of ongoing benefit to service provision as we come out of the pandemic, which, although the pandemic has been horrible, is at least some positive silver cloud type lining, silver lining of cloud type benefit. And it's important that, having gone through all this, that we don't lose too much of that as things try to go back to normal.
Yeah. So moving on, we're in London, looking at digital access for all, and the challenge for this from the London government is that every Londoner has good and reliable internet access and basic digital skills. And their mission is to provide for digitally excluded Londoners in 4 ways: by understanding the reasons why people don't have access and what frontline services tell us are these Londoners' needs; using this data to work with adult education colleges, councils, and the VCS, voluntary community sector, to supplement the rollout of new basic digital skills entitlement from September this year, to develop a common approach, for example, a minimum access package, device, data, and/or skills to those most in need, and more generally, providing adequate internet speeds to London households. So that sounds like something that all cities could benefit from, or in all towns even. But it's good to see, obviously London has the highest concentration of people in the UK, so it's good to see it all being planned well to come together. And this is a good, on screen now, Sweyn has the digital access for all, digital exclusion and skills, kind of an infographic, isn't it, Sweyn?
It is.
Yeah.
It's quite dense with words, but it's an infographic nevertheless.
Pointing out in kind of some useful pictures the pandemic demand for connectivity, with 55% of London's civil society organisations reporting an increase in demand for digital connectivity from the people they support, and then 10% not possessing smartphones. So, I mean, the good news is 90% possess smartphones, but even 10% of people not having them is an issue. If that's where people are going to be trying to access apps and services, then they definitely needs to be a standard device, really. On the right hand side of this infographic, it says if you're poor, you have much less chance of being online, and shows lower income home internet access. About half, almost exactly half, isn't it, of higher income home internet access, and just make a difference. And even when you have internet access, if it's patchy or if you have to share with other people, it's gonna have a
That's
bad
pretty stark.
effect.
That statistic, isn't it? 99% of households with income of over 40,000 have pounds have home internet access, and only 51% of households earning between 6 and 10,000 had home internet access.
Yeah, wow. I mean, it's hard enough to take in that some households only have income of between 6 and 10,000.
Absolutely.
It doesn't seem like you could live on that. But not having internet access. I mean, as we've had stories on the program previously where we saw that not having internet access it can impoverish you, because you don't have to get the choices, you don't get the chance to compare and switch services, so and therefore save money and make better use of the money that you have. So it's multiple disadvantages there. And the basic skills heading then is says at least 9% of Londoners do not possess any of the 7 foundational digital skills, including being able to open an internet browser and connect to a Wi-Fi network. But 18% lack one or more digital skills. So there's obviously digital skills are growing, but 9% not possessing any of them is quite stark as well. And again, I'd say that would be people who have less advantages than others. So let's all try and do something about that.
Those 7 foundational digital skills, I'm not completely certain what they are, what each of them is, but that's the real measure of who's got access. One of the main measures, because those skills, they kind of evolve over time, and just because you knew how to do this 20 years ago, 10 years ago, even 5 years ago, doesn't necessarily mean that you're confident about how those things are presented now. So there's an endless task of keeping up to date and helping others keep up to date with those things as they evolve and as they change.
Yeah, I mean, I'm familiar with this because of the work that I do with small voluntary organizations who tend to maybe have less digital skills, but they under the national standard for essential digital skills, they list them as they list 5 of them anyway, as using using devices and handling information, creating and editing information, communicating, transacting, and being safe and responsible online. So if you don't have those, then actually I've got a screen here, Sweyn, that I'll share, because it does have the foundational skills. Here we go, foundation skills. So these are, turning on a device. You'd think everybody could, but they not necessarily do it, including entering and updating any account information safely, such as the password. That's the first one. Using available controls on a device, such as the mouse and keyboard for a computer or touch screen on a smartphone or tablet. Number 3, making use of accessibility tools, including assistive technology, to make devices easier to use, such as changing display sessions to make content easier to read. Number 5, interacting with the home screen on a device. Number 6, connecting to the internet, including Wi-Fi, safely and securely, and opening a browser. And number 7, opening and accessing an application on a device. So these are the foundation skills. These don't even go on to the essential skills, Sweyn. So we are talking about some very
absolute foundation.
Very
There's only 6 of those, and the London talks about 7, and I found another list of 5. So, but
okay, between us we can.
I don't think we need to get too caught up on how many there are, but
no.
If you're missing one or more, or even all of those, then you're not going to get far with websites and online services.
Yeah, absolutely. Okie dokie. So let's hope that the London Government UK Digital Access for All project does start addressing that, and then we can all learn more and benefit more from that. We are nearly out of time, but I think
So we
we'll cover the last story, because it's personal and it feels like another opportunity for learning, which is from the Express newspaper, which the headline is "Pensioner turned away from his local pub because he doesn't have a smartphone." I mean, this kind of encapsulates maybe some of our what we've been talking about today and on other programs. And the story goes on to say a vulnerable pensioner was denied entry to a pub for an outdoor pint because he doesn't own a smartphone. The gentleman, David Walters, have you got it, Sweyn?
Like most newspapers, this website is a riot of automatic things that have to switch off. So
okay.
We'll get there.
Okay, so I'll read on. The gentleman, David Walters, who was 78, was unable to use the NHS Track and Trace app to check in at the Angel Inn in Corbridge, Northumberland, and so staff said he couldn't come in. He has blasted the policy as ageist. He's a widower, and he said many older people do not own the latest technology, and he was very disappointed. He said this was going to be the first time I could get out. He's considered to be extremely vulnerable. He said older people like me don't have this computer knowledge because we weren't brought up with computers, and he thought it was really ageist because they should know, the people in the pub, that people of my age can't use this sophisticated equipment. And Age UK were asked about it, and they say the use of modern technology in the re-emergence from lockdown risks widening the digital divide, reducing the opportunities for some older people to enjoy socialising once again, said the charity's director, Caroline Abrahams, in The Telegraph.
Lovely picture of the Angel Inn pub there as well.
Yes, very nice. So the pub, the Angel Inn, has apologised to Mr.
News.
Walters.
Yes, good news at the end.
Yes. And on their Facebook page, they've said, after following guidelines, we've made a mistake and we are sorry. Everyone is welcome at the Angel. We will personally be apologising to David and inviting him over for drinks on the house. And it does remind us that government guidance states venues must provide an alternative method for customers to submit their contact details if they do not own a smartphone. And the guidance actually says you must make sure there's a method of checking in that does not rely on the customer using a smartphone or other technology in order not to digitally exclude people without access to these technologies.
And that's the key point of all of this.
Definitely. Make sure
a pub makes a mistake, a customer is upset, apologies are made. But the main point is that if you do the guidelines properly, there shouldn't be digital exclusion.
Absolutely. And with that, we will sign off for this week, and we hope you all have a great week.
Yes, have a great week, everyone.
Thank you.